Welcome to another edition of Valley Newsline. Hello, I'm your host, Ron Whitlock. Thank you for tuning in today. No border wall. Bumper stickers going up on vehicles all across greater South Texas. And the San Antonio Express News front page story, Tuesday, June 19th. Go to valleynewsline.tv. If you want to read the story, it says Border Security versus Border Environment. Ecotourism, something that the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas expects to be greater and greater every year as an economic factor in South Texas. As Valley Newsline continues to cover where we are in relation to the border wall, immigration reform, and those kinds of issues. So stay tuned week to week. On the program today, Richard Cortez, former chairman of the Border Trade Alliance, meeting with stakeholders all across the United States for years and years. He's the former chairman. Border Trade Alliance, now Mayor Cortez, also Mayor of McAllen, represents not only the U.S.-Canadian border, but the United States and Mexico border. So we have an expert, certified public accountant. That's what he's basically here to tell us about today, because in his realm as a certified public accountant his entire life, he's here to put out the clarion call that immigrants are good for America. We've got to have more of them. As time goes on, we're going to have him tell you and I all about that, because he says that especially Mexican workers now are critically important to the future of our nation and our country and future generations because of Social Security, low-cost food, housing, construction costs, health care, care for the elderly, as baby boomers like perhaps myself and yourself, if you ever retired, Chairman, coming on down the road. Any moment you and I are going to be desiring to retire. Why are immigrants so critically important to all the viewers watching this program today?
Well, we have some dynamics, Ron, that are occurring in the United States, and we have no control to stop those dynamics, and that is America is aging. Right now, 1 out of 12 Americans is over the age of 65. It's predicted by year 2050, 1 out of every 5 Americans is going to be over 65 years of age. Well, what does that mean to America? Well, let's talk, what does it mean, economically, okay? Well, economically, we're going to lose a lot of our workforce. A lot of these people that will be retiring were either doctors, lawyers, accountants, all kinds of people in the labor force. So these people need to be replaced. We're creating approximately 1.5 million new jobs every year. Our fertility rate is very low. We're predicted to grow no more than 0.6%. So if you put those numbers together, what America is going to be needing is going to be starving for a workforce. You cannot have a growing economy without a growing labor force. And that's a big concern to me, Ron.
You're here to tell us also today that 1 in 12 Americans is 65 and over today, but by the year 2050, 1 in 5 Americans will be over 65. That ought to tell you the story of what's going to happen over the next few decades that we're facing right now.
Well, absolutely, Ron. This is a serious issue for the United States. We need to look. I had the pleasure of taking care of my aging parents, my father and my mother. They were institutionalized for many years. And it seemed like every 4 or 5 weeks I would have to go reintroduce myself to their caretakers, because there's just a big attrition rate in those. There's not too many people that want to change the body fluids and things of patients, that are institutionalized. So it's not a job that a lot of people would like to have, but a very important job nevertheless.
And that's just part of it. I mean, all these elderly, they need food and they need health care.
Absolutely. At some point in time, we tell our children here in the United States, get an education. We want you to work smartly, not with your hands. So at the end of the day, who's going to pick the fruit? Who's going to pick the vegetables? Who's going to mow yards, build homes, make constructions, clean rooms? All those jobs are important to America. These are jobs that are not going to go away. Somebody's going to have to do them. And for the most part, Americans don't want to do those type of jobs. We say we want to better ourselves and we want to educate ourselves so we don't have to do those jobs. Well, if we're not creating those workers through normal fertility rates here, and we're not importing them from other places, and where are they going to come? It's a huge problem.
One of the factors that seems to have been reported recently that I've read up on is the fact we need 500,000, 500,000 workers to be imported in our country annually already in order for our economy to stay where it is.
Ron, the number may even be higher. Last month, the United States produced 159 new jobs. Predictably, I think we've been averaging approximately 1.5 million jobs per year. We have our unemployment rate nationwide is 4.5%. Okay, well, I don't know what is it going to take for our Congress, our president, and our Congress to say, wait a minute, this is a direction that we've got to pay close attention to, because again, how can we have a growing economy, and who's going to argue with the fact that this country, among many things that we need to continue to be strong economically. Well, if businesses rely on workers and we're not producing themselves, then where are you going to get them? That's why I want to talk to you about this thing about let's learn from the mistakes of the 1986 amnesty. Ron, let me tell you, the mistake of 1986 amnesty, that we gave amnesty to 3 million American immigrant workers, was not that we gave them amnesty. It was that we didn't fix the legal immigration policy the United States has. It's the market forces, it's the economy that's bringing those illegal immigrants over here to find jobs that they can't find somewhere else. And the only reason they're coming is because American businesses continue to employ them, and they continue to employ them because American businesses need them. But I'm going to tell you something else, that I brought a chart here that I'd like to go over with you. Right now I put here, who is looking out for aging Americans? Well, we know that a big part of all of us that retire rely on Social Security and Medicare.
Assuming this was a big pot. So this is a big pot here,
yes,
right?
This is the Social Security Medicare fund. Okay, and what we have right now is approximately, these are approximate numbers, about 163 million people, workers contributing to this fund. Approximately, we have about 50 million retired Americans that are receiving benefits. The Social Security Administration has already put out an alert that if we continue in the path that we are, by 34 years from now, by year 2041, our reserves will be down to zero. So not only is America going to be facing how are we going to care for these aging Americans that have spent all of their lifetime, bringing value to the American economy, to our country, how are we going to take care of them with funds, then who's going to take care of them? So it's a double whammy. This is why I'm very concerned with U.S. policy right now coming from Washington, because they're talking about building the fence, they're talking about stopping illegal immigration, but they're really not going into the core of the problems. They're not going to find solutions to this thing without them looking at the real evidence. And that's why I think America has not properly debated this issue of security and issue of immigration. I think when the American people really get all of the facts, all of the information, I think many Americans will come to the same conclusion that I have come to, and that is we need to fix our legal immigration policy first before we try fixing the illegal problem that we have.
I'm opposed to the building of a wall as it is currently planned. I think that it will have a lot of unintended negative consequences to the area, including environmental consequences. It's going to interfere with land use by private landowners. There are other ways, including the virtual wall, that would address this problem probably much more efficiently than the construction of a large fence.
I'm very concerned, let me say, about the ecotourism. I'm concerned about just the fact that we're putting a solid fence between our two countries and between families and between our commerce. So I just think there's a better way to handle our immigration problems.
If you're 33 years of age today, by the age of retirement at 67, Social Security will be broke.
Yes, sir, and that's not me telling you, that's our own Social Security Administration Board of Trustees telling you that.
So where do Mexican immigrants, currently mainly illegal, 12 million already in the United States, where do they fit into this mixture?
Well, if we legalize them, Ron, then they become legal workers in the United States, and legal workers in the United States, they all have to contribute to Social Security and Medicare fund. So if they're here already under the darkness of the illegality of they're here, it makes perfect sense to me that those that bring value, that we find a way how to keep them here. I want to tell you that there's many illegal people that are coming to the United States with bad intentions. In fact, if you talk to a lot of our sheriffs and law enforcement people, they're rapists, they're murderers, they're thieves, there are many bad ones that come over here, and our jails are full of them. But the majority are not. If you look at the evidence, the majority are not. The majority come here to find a job. So what we've been telling Secretary Shortoff, and I believe he agrees with me, is like trying to find a needle in the haystack. Let's remove some of the hay, and it'll be easier for you to find that needle. By legalizing many of these people that are future workers in the United States, if we give them a legal way to come here, our law enforcement agencies they're going to have a better job going after the ones that are really criminals and the ones that are really coming here to do bad things for us.
You're trying to tell me that all these green and white Border Patrol, Department of Homeland Security vehicles we see running up and down the streets and highways of the Rio Grande Valley in South Texas would be, if we had immigration reform and had a path to citizenship and had a guest worker program, if they could take these billions of dollars and all these Border Patrolmen and focus on catching drug smugglers and the bad people?
Absolutely, Ron.
Is that simple?
Well, to me,
in your opinion?
Well, to me, is that simple. First of all, let me tell you that we have millions crossing over here, and the majority of those millions come here to find a job. Then it makes perfect sense to me to give them a legal path to come over here, either through a temporary work visa program or a permanent visa program. We decide. See, if we fix our legal immigration policy, we decide who we want, how we want them, when we want them, for how long we want them. Okay? It's a lot better than them just coming over here on their own and making those decisions on their own. Well, to me, it makes perfect sense that if we do that, then the need for this fence, so-called, to really catch all these people. And let me tell you something about Border Patrol. Border Patrol will not distinguish between someone that's coming here to be a housekeeper or a gardener or a construction worker and a rapist. They treat them all the same. Well, how could that be an efficient system of enforcing our borders? Let's remove some of the hay. Let's find a legal way to bring them in here. Let's bring value to our economy and to the needs of the people that we have here. And then let's concentrate all our efforts to stop those that really come here for the wrong reasons. I think that's a much better use of resources than to build a fence. And let's talk about a fence. We know that we're 2,000 miles of border in the southern border. Imagine if you were to fence 700 of that 2,000 miles. What is 700 miles of fencing going to do in the border of 2,000 miles? Well, bring that down to 135 that's going to be here in the Rio Grande Valley. Okay? If 700 is not going to be enough to seal the whole border, what's 135? But yet that 135 miles of fencing here in the border is going to have huge negative impacts on our ecology, the message we send to one of our biggest trading partners. And I want to talk about the trade that we have with Canada and Mexico, Ron, because I think that's also another important piece of information that the American people need to know.
Well, Mayor Cortez, as Mayor of McAllen, you held a press conference some months ago and provided this report and others records and reports of border crossings at all the valley bridges, international bridges. And you were showing already declining visitations on the part of Mexican shoppers into the United States of America, coming in to spend dollars in Texas and the United States just by the discussion alone of the fact we're going to build a border wall.
Yes, sir. Unfortunately, Ron, that's true. As I told the people in our conference, the sad thing is that when Miss USA in the Miss Universe pageant stumbled and fell down in Mexico City, she was booed. And she wasn't booed because of who she is or what she is. She was booed because she's American. And as you go throughout the world now, unfortunately, many of American friends are now starting to hate Americans because of a lot of the policies that Americans have. So yes, it's a very concern to us that have been living here with our neighbors to the south for centuries. For centuries, that someone that doesn't live here and doesn't understand the culture and this interaction, interdependence that we have with one another, is doing policy for us here.
I'm opposed. I don't see how it can work. I came from a farm in Oklahoma, and if that was my daddy's property and they were going to take it, it's going to be washed out. There's going to be no way that we can enforce that wall and keep those people out, and we're going to lose our territory. And you know, we have a wonderful birding festival here. We have a lot of birds. I'm worried about the way it's going to interfere with the way that Mother Nature has planned everything. I just don't think that wall's supposed to be there. That's just the way I feel.
Well, I'm opposed to it myself because I've never seen a wall that couldn't be climbed over or dug underneath and made a tunnel under, and I think it's going to be a waste of money.
Texas 2 senators for the state of Texas, from Brownsville to Corpus, McAllen to Alice, Chuy Hinojosa and Eddie Lucio, came out and said they were concerned about the Bush legacy when he retires to the Crawford Ranch. Will it be him driving around the Crawford Ranch and going, "What was I thinking? I built a wall in my own state while I was president of the United States, and my father and Ronald Reagan brought down the Berlin Wall, but I built a wall. What was I thinking? What were my advisors telling me?" Is that going to be the Bush legacy?
I hope not. He still has time to do the right things. Congress has time to do the right things. This is not a simple problem to solve, but the aggregate wisdom of many is better than the wisdom of one. That's why I agree with Senator Hutchinson and Senator Cornyn that local people should be part of the decision-making process. We have local knowledge. I think that's important. I think America needs to rethink this situation of immigration and security further, and then we have at least a fighting chance of coming up with the correct choice.
Even though our two senators want local involvement, and President Bush, while governor, was involved with a bipartisan cooperation with Bob Bullock, where local interest should be involved, local school boards should be in control. Now he's president of the United States, and he is threatening to veto any legislation requiring DHS consult with you and county leaders and state leaders on where the wall would be built. Were you shocked to hear that the president of the United States was threatening such a veto?
I really was shocked, Ron. You know, when we met, and I've met personally with Secretary Shorthoff at least twice that I can remember, maybe even 3 times.
You were personally with the President of the United States when he came to McAllen.
And the times that I discussed with Secretary Shorthoff, he agreed that a physical fence may not be appropriate in all places, that he would like to have discretion. But he didn't have discretion, that he was told that he must build this fence, he must build it as quickly as possible because that's what Congress told to do. Well, if the man that you send to do the job is saying we need to rethink what you Congress decided to do, then why shouldn't the President and the Congress listen to the man that they sent over here, to fix the problem or to do the things that they said? So it makes absolutely no sense. Makes absolutely no sense not to have local input. They're representing us. I'm an American, and everyone here in the Rio Grande Valley and the border is an American. So if the policy that America is choosing to do is supposed to help us, then why wouldn't you want to listen to what we think about what you're doing for us? So I'm very concerned with that.
In response to the criticism of the legacy impairment, the creation of the building of the wall and what that would do to the Bush legacy, a personal friend of his, the Secretary of State of the state of Texas, Roger Williams, had these comments to Valley Newsline. You taking a position, sir, on whether or not this wall ought to be built along the
Well, I think
river?
the position of most Texans is that there probably might be a better way than build a wall. And I think as we move forward, I think that we can show that. Personally, I'm someone that thinks it's people doing business with people is a pretty good deal, and maybe putting more folks down there to improve the effort. But I think most Texans are in agreement that we can possibly have other options than the wall. The president's a friend of mine, and I think that his legacy will be much greater than that. I think the history books, I don't know if it'll be 50 years, 20 years, 60 years, or whatever, will show that this president was one of the best presidents we've had in the history of this country.
So his president's friend is coming out telling you and I through the camera while visiting the Valley that the Bush legacy, many decades down the road, going to be a good legacy, but even though he himself, as Secretary of State, joins in rank with the Governor of Texas, Speaker of the House, and Lieutenant Governor being opposed to the border wall. President Bill Summers, Valley Partnership, you saw Senator Lucio, you saw Senator Hinojosa in their remarks about President Bush, former Texas Governor Bush's legacy being the wall of Texas when he retires to the Crawford Ranch. Your reaction?
I'm with them. I think that my good friend George Bush, I don't know who's talking to him, but it isn't right for him to put a physical wall along the border of the Rio Grande in the Rio Grande Valley. We have a barrier, and that's called the Rio Grande River. I think he's wrong, and I'm disappointed in him.
Ron, let me tell you, we enjoyed $69 billion of trade with Canada and Mexico in March. 29 billion of that trade came through trucks through Canada. 20.1 billion of that trade came through trucks through Mexico. Well, I don't know what you think about that, but that's a lot of trade. Well, if we depend on that trade with our two biggest trading partners, and you were the CEO of this country and you wanted to improve that trade, if you wanted to make it more efficient, what would you do? You would invest in our legal ports of entry to make it more efficient, to encourage that trade. What are we doing? Instead of investing in the legal ports of entry, we're investing in a fence that brings absolutely no value. A fence will not make an apprehension, okay? And yet our federal government, and let me tell you about our federal government, it's the same administration and Congress that got us into a war in Iraq and $8.5 trillion debt. That same administration and that same Congress is now telling us, the American people, that with a 700-mile fence, they can secure our borders and stop illegal immigrations. Ron, if they continue that path, we're at the beginning of the end.
Mayor Cortez, Mayor of the City of McAllen, thank you for coming and being with us here on Valley Newsline today. If you want to watch previous programs on this issue and others, go to valleynewsline.tv. If you want to have feedback, go to our feedback line, email us at valleynewsline.tv. Till next time, adios.